Hello, and welcome to a Pokemon XD Yellow Darkness video, where today I'm going to be using XD's fire types to beat the game. Now, from my count, there are 8 fire types throughout the game, and unlike a lot of different types, they are actually spread out fairly evenly across the entire game, which could either be helpful or detrimental, just depending on whether or not I need a Pokemon sooner or later. Now, the great thing about the fire types is that there are quite a few with different secondary typings, giving me a lot of different use cases for them, as well as the fire type is a pretty good type in this game. So that's why I think they're going to do very well. Anyway, with that, let's go ahead and get right into it. Now, luckily, the very first fire type in this run is going to be obtainable right off the bat by turning our Eevee into a Flareon by visiting this guy in Gadian Port and picking up the Firestone. So now with our first fire type obtained, let's go over our Flareon in particular, which has a jolly nature, raising its speed but lowering its special attack, which honestly might not be the worst for it because the speed is a little low, and there are plenty of special attacking fire types. It gets the Flash Fire ability, making it immune to fire, and also it powers up the next fire type move I use. And now moving on to the beginning of the game, and all I have is Flareon, which at this point is perfectly fine. Flareon is a great Pokemon at the beginning. Now you may have noticed I didn't add the stats or the move pools of Flareon, and I don't think I'm going to do that for this video. I'm just going to keep things very streamlined. However, whenever I catch a fire type, I will add their purified moves into the bottom corner. That way you can see what they'll have without me having to go over to that section of their menu screen. Anyway, with that being said, we're just about finished with the battle against the old man, and of course, Flareon does extremely well here, so we're able to get past it very easily. And now we move on to the battle against the Power Rangers, where we run into our second fire type, which is the Shadow Houndour. Now, on top of being a strong special attacker, it is also very fast and part dark, which gives us another type to hit with. And Flareon just got a crit and took it down. Okay, well that is a bit unfortunate. Though, once I take down the Slugma, if I can take down the Slugma, I can just redo this fight again. At level 16, Flareon gets the move Ember, which I decide to teach over Tail Whip, and then going back into the fight again, I pick up the Houndour, who will have Charm, Feint Attack, Ember, and Roar when it's purified. And this Houndour in particular has a quirky nature, which is a neutral nature, but honestly, it's perfectly fine for it. And it gets the Early Bird ability, which is completely useless. But anyway, now inside the Cypher base, I pick up my third fire type, which is Numel, who when purified will have Charm, Takedown, Dig, and Ember, and is also holding the charcoal item, raising all fire type damage by 10%. It is also part ground, which is very nice. It has a gentle nature, raising its special defense but lowering its defense, which considering its 4 times weakness to water is probably kind of useful. It has the Oblivious ability, which prevents attraction, and soon after I go ahead and purify my Houndour, that way it'll be more effective against the boss of this area. I pick up the Carvana, not for the Pokemon itself, but for the Black Glasses item to raise Dark-type damage by 10%, and then I go into the battle against Silver, and she leaves with a Love Disc and a Beautifly, and right away I go for Bite and Feint Attack, hoping to take down Love Disc in a single turn. Bite is doing about a third, and Feint Attack takes it down to red, but unfortunately it's not quite enough to finish it off. And Houndour is already taking quite a bit of damage from the two of them. Water Gun finishes it off, and so I send out Numel, which is still a Shadow Pokemon. I do take down the Love Disc though, so it won't go down to a 4 times effective water type move. Gust hits it, doing half of its health, and even though Ember is super effective, it's not quite enough to finish off Roselia. Gust really doesn't do that much to Flareon, but Mega Drain does take down the Numel. So all I have left is Flareon, which does take down the Roselia, and sends out her final Pokemon, a Shadow Delcatty. Now, even though Flareon is a very good Pokemon, I don't think it can take down these two without some extreme luck, and that is a good start. Beautifly goes down to a crit fire. I go for Bite, hoping for Flinch, and I get it, but unfortunately I get hit by Cute Charm. And so I'm taken down. A very possible first try victory, but unfortunately I don't get it. I decide to go ahead and do a little bit more training, get level 23 for Quick Attack, and then I go into the battle once again. Now with Quick Attack, I'm dealing half damage to Love Disc, which means that the Feint Attack will finish it off. And then out comes the Roselia once again. It will be able to survive an Ember, so I'm really hoping Houndour outspeeds and can finish it off. And I get a critical hit, taking it down in a single hit. Okay, well that is very nice. Out comes the Shadow Delcatty once again, and Ember goes into it, dealing a decent amount of damage. I go for 2 Embers because I don't want to make contact with it again. Houndour gets taken down in a single Shadow Rush, but it's already done its job. One more Ember should take down the Delcatty, and then all that's left is the Beautifly, which can't take down either of my Pokemon now, so I just go for an Ember to finish it off, and we beat Lavrina on the second attempt. Now, of course, you can't have a Fire types only run without the obligatory Mirror B. How you doing, Mirror B? Well, it's always great to see you. Unfortunately, you're a bit scary because you have Rain Dance. Anyway, a little later on, I run into my next Fire type, which is a Shadow Vulpix, which when purified will have Charm, Heat Wave, Ember, and Dig. I should also mention that it is a Firestone evolution. Anyway, our Vulpix in particular has a bold nature, raising its defense but lowering its attack, which is alright I guess for it, and it gets access to the Flash Fire ability, just like Flareon. Anyway, now it's finally time to purify Numel, that way I can start actually leveling it up, and then I head over to the Real Cam Tower to go pick up my two favorite TMs, Hidden Power and Protect, and at the same time I'm also going to pick up the move Fire Blast in case I need that extra amount of damage. Anyway, I go ahead and teach Hidden Power to both Flareon and Houndour, and Flareon gets Hidden Power Rock at 69 base power, quite possibly the best Hidden Power type it could have gotten, and it's nearly perfect. And then Houndour got Hidden Power Grass at 63 base power, also very good for it because this allows it to hit the water types that it couldn't before. But anyway, now moving on, at level 25 Houndour gets the move Bite, which I decide to teach over Feint Attack for the flinch chance, and then it evolves into Houndoom, which is going to be a huge increase in stats for it. Anyway, at level 19, Numel gets the move Magnitude, which I decide to teach over Takedown. I take a pit stop at the Tutor Lady to teach Body Slam over Quick Attack, and then head over to the Relic Stone to go ahead and purify Vulpix, where it gets the move Confuse Ray, which I decide to teach over Charm, and then I go into the battle against Snattle. He leads with a Quagsire and a Lantern, and right away I can go for Hidden Power to take down the Quagsire in a single hit, because it's 4 times weak to Grass. Then out comes his next Pokemon, a Shadow Lunatone, go for Body Slam into Lantern, dealing well over half, and then I have to double into the Lunatone to get rid of it right away, so I go for Bite, which takes it down to low yellow, and another Bite takes it down, sending out his next Pokemon, Cast Form. Lantern hits another Water Gun, though luckily into Flareon. Go for Bite to take down the Lantern. It got a crit, but I'm not sure if that was necessary, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Matang. Now Cast Form goes for Icy Wind, which doesn't really do all that much damage, but it does lower our speed, so there's a good chance it's able to outspeed like it does, and use Water Pulse, which luckily doesn't confuse, and it gets taken down right away, just leaving the Matang left, which Ember takes it down to low yellow and burns it. So at this point, it's going down very easily. I decide to swap into Numel just to get a little bit of experience on it, before taking it down with another Ember. So after a very easy Snattle, I now move on to the SS Libra, where I run into the only other Firestone in the game, and also the Flamethrower TM, which I teach to Houndoom, and then I go into the battle against Gonzap. He leads with an Electrode and a Nuzleaf, and right away the Nuzleaf is going to go for Fake Out, and Electrode decides to go for Sonic Boom instead of Spark, which is nice. Flamethrower isn't quite enough to take down the Electrode though, and this time it does actually go for Spark, though luckily no paralysis. Flamethrower finishes off, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is Vileplume, go for Body Slam into it, dealing over half its health and paralyzing it. Houndoom nearly gets taken down by Nuzleaf's Hyper Beam, so I decide to go ahead and take it down this turn, and then out comes Whiscash. Body Slam finishes off Vileplume, and then at level 31, Numel gets the move Amnesia, which after thinking about it for a second, I decide not to learn before he sends out his final Pokemon, Skarmory. Go for Flamethrower into Skarmory just to take it down right away, and then all that's left is that Whiscash. Body Slam does a decent amount of damage, and strangely enough, I decided to go for Bite here. I think I just forgot it was Hidden Power Grass, though it doesn't really make a difference because it goes down that same turn anyway. Now moving on, and Numel evolves into Camerupt, which is going to be a very nice improvement for it. And at the same time, it gets access to the best move in the game, Rock Slide, which I teach over Dig. Now moving on, and we run into another Fire type, this being Growlithe, who when purified will have Charm, Flamethrower, Bite, and Takedown. And Growlithe is also a Firestone evolution, so I had to choose between it and Vulpix, which we'll get to that decision in a bit. But our Growlithe in particular has a Nani nature, raising its attack but lowering its special defense, which honestly, Growlithe has a pretty decent attack stat, and it gets Intimidate for lowering the opponent's attack, which is really nice. Anyway, at the top of the pyramid, I get the move for Earthquake, which I teach over Magnitude, and then at the same time teach Houndoom Protect before going into the battle against Gorgon. He leaves with a Celio and a Lairon, and right away I decide to go for Flamethrower, which doesn't do much to Celio because of the Thick Vat ability, and even with a crit Rock Slide, it's still not enough to take it down, and Celio fires right back with a crit, taking down Camerupt and dealing a ton of damage to Houndour. Now Flareon is going to go for Earthquake this turn, so I need to take it down with a Flamethrower, and decide not to learn Odor Sleuth. Then he sends out Slowking, go for Body Slam to finish off the Celio, bringing out Ursaring. And now that these two are together, Ursaring is going to go for Protect, so I can take down the Slowking without having to worry about it. Unless Slowking survives on a Sliver and uses another Earthquake, taking down Houndour and doing over half to Flareon. I send out Vulpix, go for Body Slam into Ursaring, which gets a crit, almost takes it down, and luckily it decides not to take down the Vulpix, so it can go for Heat Wave, taking both of his Pokemon down, leaving just 2 Pokemon left. Unfortunately, those 2 Pokemon are his 2 Shadow Pokemon, a Shadow Primeape and a Shadow Hypno. Now the hope is that Primeape decides to attack Vulpix and I can bite and flinch the Hypno, but unfortunately it takes down Flareon right away. I send out Growlithe, and a Shadow Storm comes out, dealing quite a bit to Growlithe despite the resistance, though it was a crit. Heat Wave does almost nothing. I do have Bite on Growlithe, so I can at least deal a little bit of damage, but Shadow Storm does way too much, and Bite does surprisingly almost nothing. Anyway, going back into the battle once again, this time I decide to not go for Flamethrower, and instead use Hidden Power like I should have in the first place, which does well over half, but as it turns out it doesn't even matter because Celio didn't get taken down by the Rock Slide. Though with a flinch I am able to get past it, and then go for Earthquake to take down the Flareon and it. And then out comes his next 2 Pokemon, the Slowking and the Ursaring once again. And now that I'm in a much better position, I can go for Rock Slide and Bite to either take down the Slowking or have it flinch. Slowking actually gets taken down by a crit Bite, and that brings out his Shadow Primeape once again, and Rock Slide does almost nothing. Go for Protect and Earthquake. Ursaring decides to use his own Earthquake, dealing a ton of damage to Shadow Primeape in the process, but definitely a little scary now. Go for Flamethrower, which does quite a lot to Ursaring. Shadow Rush does almost half to Flareon. Body Slam finishes off the Ursaring, and then out comes the Shadow Hypno once again. But unlike last time, I'm in a much better position. I can go for Flamethrower because I know I can outspeed to take it down, and then Bite into Hypno. Unfortunately, it still was able to get off a Shadow Storm, but it's not really doing too much damage. Another Bite takes it down to red, and a final Bite finishes it off. So a pretty easy second attempt. Now, before going into the final area of the game, I take a pit stop over at the Relic Stone once again to purify our Growlithe, and use the Firestone on it to evolve it into Arcanine. And it really is unfortunate that it's not a hard decision to pick Arcanine over Ninetales. It really is just a lot better in a lot of different ways, which is a bit unfortunate because it would have been very interesting if the choice was difficult. But anyway, with that, we are now moving on to the final area of the game, and the fire types are doing incredibly well. With only a few small slowdowns so far, I bet they're going to do great in the last area. So we go into the battle against Lavrina, leads with a Gardevoir and a Gorbis, and right away I go for Hidden Power to take down the Gorbis. And unfortunately it doesn't quite do that, but Body Slam does finish it off. Then out comes Roselia. Gardevoir goes for Psychic, dealing a decent amount to Flareon, but more importantly it lowered my special defense. Go for Flamethrower to take down Roselia, and then out comes her next Pokemon, a Shadow Farfetch'd. And I really need to get rid of this Gardevoir. I deal quite a bit of damage to it, but unfortunately it's not a one-shot with Body Slam. I go for Flamethrower into Farfetch'd, and it's not quite a one-shot either. Body Slam takes down the Gardevoir, and then out comes her final Pokemon, a Shadow Altaria. Unfortunately, because the Farfetch'd is still alive, it goes for Shadow Panic, which luckily only confuses my Houndour. And so I swap into Arcanine. And while it wasn't really planned, the Intimidate from Arcanine is going to help a bit with the Shadow Altaria. I take down the Farfetch'd, and Altaria goes for Shadow Break, and it actually still did quite a bit to Arcanine anyway, but anyway, the Altaria gets taken down shortly after, and with that we beat Lavrina on the first attempt. So now moving into the volcano, and we run into our next fire type, which is a Shadow Magmar, which has a very valuable purified moveset with Follow Me, Fire Blast, Cross Chop, and Thunder Punch. Very varied moves, as well as a great support move in Follow Me. Anyway, our Magmar in particular has a Bashful nature, which is a neutral nature, but that is perfectly fine. And it has the Flame Body ability, which can cause burn on opponents' contact moves. Anyway, with that, we run into our next fire type, Rapidash, who has Baton Pass, Solar Beam, Sunny Day, and Flamethrower. And then, at the same time, we have Magcargo with Refresh, Heat Wave, Earthquake, and Flamethrower. Thank you, Cypher Peon Colist. I will be taking both of those. And at this point we have filled up our party, so it is time to start looking around for who to swap out, and unfortunately it's Vulpix. It's really unfortunate that there's only 2 Firestones, but anyway, we now move on to our Rapidash in particular, who has a serious nature, which is once again a neutral nature, and he gets Runaway, which is completely useless. Anyway, at the top of Volcano, we go into the battle against Snettle. He leads with a Quagsire and a Batang, and right away I go for Hidden Power Grass to take it down in a single hit, and then out comes this next Pokemon, Scizor, and it is 4 times weak to fire, and Ember doesn't quite take it down. And so I decide to go ahead and take down the Matang with Flamethrower, and then finish off the Scizor with another Ember, bringing out his first Shadow Pokemon, a Shadow Solrock, and once Scizor goes down, he sends out his Cast Form. I decide to double into the Shadow Solrock so it can't set up Shadow Sky, and Houndour's Bite nearly takes it down in a single hit, but Flareon comes in for the save on that, and then out comes his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Starmie. Unfortunately, Flareon gets confused and nearly taken down. Bite isn't quite a one-shot, and Flareon hits itself in confusion. I decide to send out Rapidash now. Because it's a Shadow Pokemon, it's not going to take much damage from Starmie's moves, and luckily Starmie actually does attack it. I go for Flamethrower, and that takes Cast Form nearly down to half. It gets burnt, Bite finishes off the Starmie, and then all that's left is that Cast Form, which then goes down to a Flamethrower. So with that, we beat Snettle on the first attempt. With quick access now between the bottom and the top of Volcano, I decide to run back over to a Gate Village to purify Magmar and Rapidash, and then I go over to the move tutor to go pick up the move Double Edge, which I teach Arcanine over Takedown before going into the battle against Ardos. He leads with a Shadow Swallow and Alakazam, and right away I go for Flamethrower into the Swallow, and Body Slam into Alakazam. And Flamethrower isn't even close to taking it down actually, and neither is Body Slam. So now unfortunately Alakazam is going to be able to outspeed and might take down Flareon. Swallow decides to go for Shadow Half, which is probably the best outcome at this point, and Houndour gets hit by a Thunder Punch, so both of my Pokemon survive this turn. However, we are in a very bad position now. Go for Body Slam to take down his 2 leads, and then out comes the Kingdra and Heracross. And Heracross is a one-shot, I think, so I'm going to prioritize taking it down first, but Kingdra is a huge threat with the move Hydro Pump. Though it isn't fully accurate, so there's always a chance of a miss, I take down Heracross, and then I decide not to learn Smog, and then he sends out his Shadow Electabuzz. Dragon Breath comes out, taking down Flareon, and then I decide to send out Camerupt. Now this is a little risky, because Hydro Pump will absolutely destroy it, but it might just go for the KO on Houndour, so I go for Protect and Earthquake, and luckily it works out in my favor. I'm able to KO Electabuzz and deal half health to Kingdra, and then he sends out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Snorlax. Now Houndour is getting extremely low on health now. I decide to go for Bite, hoping for a flinch on Kingdra, and unfortunately I don't get it, and it survives on 5 HP, allowing it to take down Camerupt, and so I'm forced to send out Arcanine, which with Intimidate should definitely help against this Snorlax. Houndour goes down, but that's perfectly fine. I send out Magmar, and because of this Cross Drop, it'll do super effective damage against the Snorlax, and I can finish off the Kingdra with Double Edge. And now all that's left is to take down the Snorlax. It does hit another Shadow Wind, but it doesn't really matter at this point, as long as Cross Chop actually hits, which it does, and we beat Ardos on the first attempt. So now moving on to Gorgon, he lives with a Slowking and a Nurse Ring, and right away I go for Thunder Punch and Bite, which Bite takes Slowking down below half, and Thunder Punch finishes off, though it was with a crit, so I'm not sure if that was a guaranteed KO. Go for Flamethrower into the Aggron, taking it down to low red, and Cross Chop into Nurse Ring, taking it down in a single hit. And then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is Walrein. Aggron goes for Earthquake, taking Houndour down to 19 and taking down Magmar, dealing a little bit of damage to Walrein in the process as well. And then after a bit of deliberation, I eventually decide to send out Camerupt, because I could just go for Protect and Earthquake. Now Aggron is going to go for Protect this turn as well, but one thing I hadn't considered is that Walrein is faster, which is honestly a bit unexpected, at least I think. I go for Hidden Power Grass, which finishes off Walrein and brings out his first Shadow Pokemon, which is a Shadow Poliwrath. And then Aggron goes for Earthquake, which KOs Houndour and Camerupt, and does a little bit of damage to Poliwrath as well. I send out Flareon and Arcanine, because honestly they're my best answers to Poliwrath, because it's the only 2 Pokemon that can deal neutral damage to it. And I go for Double Edge, taking it down to yellow. Ember finishes off Aggron, bringing out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Mr. Mime. And because the Poliwrath is still alive, it's going to be able to set up Shadow Sky, which will raise the damage of all the Shadow moves, including Mr. Mime's extremely strong Shadow Storms. And unfortunately, it outspeeds both of my Pokemon still, Double Edge doesn't quite take it down in a single hit, though Body Slam does finish it off, and then all that's left is a Poliwrath, which hits another Shadow Storm, but it's not able to take down my Flareon, so I'm able to send out Rapidash and Outspeed with both of them to take it down. Go for Body Slam and Sunny Day, just to get rid of the Shadow Sky, I guess. And Flareon didn't quite KO it. Okay, well, Solar Beam will do the trick, and we beat Gorgon on the first attempt. Okay, maybe a little closer than it needed to be, but anyway, we move on to the battle against Eldis. He leads with a Shadow Magnetric and Ninjask, and right away I go for Earthquake and Protect, which will take down the Shadow Magnetric. Unfortunately, doing it this way does mean it's able to set up Shadow Sky, which doesn't bode well for his next Pokemon, a Shadow Salamence, now with its boosted power, which should hopefully not be too bad. Anyway, I go ahead and go for Bite and Rock Slide, which Ninjask hits a Dig, taking Hammerrock below half, and it gets taken down by Shadow Rush. I send out Rapidash, and then Houndour goes for Bite, dealing very little to the Salamence. Now that Rapidash is out, though, I can go for Sunny Day to get rid of the Shadow Sky. Unfortunately, not before Houndour gets taken down by Shadow Rush as well. But now that the Intimidate has already been used, I can send out Flareon, and I can go for Hidden Power Rock to deal a decent amount of damage to it, and then I decide to go for Solar Beam, which is definitely not the correct choice, but Rapidash goes down anyway, so it didn't really end up mattering. I send out Arcanine, and that'll also lower the attack of Salamence, and Hidden Power Rock still not doing as much as I was expecting. Shadow Rush hits Flareon, almost dealing half. Double Edge takes Salamence down very low, and Hidden Power finishes it off, bringing out his next Pokemon, which is a Flareon. Now, unfortunately, I don't really have any Ice-type moves, so I am going to just have to rely on neutral damage. So I go for Body Slam and Double Edge. Double Edge takes it down below half, and Body Slam is able to take it down with a crit, but I'm not sure if that was necessary. And then he sends out his next Pokemon, which is a Shadow Marowak. And I decide to go for Emperor and Flamethrower into it because of its really high physical bulk. And Flamethrower actually gets a crit, taking it down in a single hit, bringing out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Lapras. And so I'm able to go Ember into it and deal almost no damage, and the Sunlight ends as well. And Flareon goes down. I send out my final Pokemon, Magmar. I go for Flamethrower, which really doesn't do that much damage, and it decides to go for Shadow Storm because it saw the KO on Flareon, and I guess the KO on Arcanine as well. And then Cross Chop misses, though I'm not sure it would have mattered anyway. So now on the third attempt, and I lead the exact same way and start the exact same way as well, taking down Magnetric right off the bat. Except this time it actually decides to go for Shadow End instead of Shadow Sky, which means that the Salamence isn't going to be dealing nearly as much damage. Now preferably the Magnetric would have missed the Shadow End, but beggars can't be choosers. Anyway, Dig decides to hit Houndour, and Camerupt goes down, which is a bit unfortunate, but anyway, I send out Arcanine, and the Intimidate lowers the attack of Salamence even further, to the point where Salamence is now very much manageable, only dealing about a third to Arcanine, and Double Edge takes it down to a low yellow, and so Bite should be able to finish it off, except Houndour gets taken down by Shadow Rush, and so I decide to send out Rapidash, that way I can set the sun, go for another Double Edge to finish off Salamence, and then he sends out his next Pokemon, the Flareon once again, go for Double Edge into it and set up Sunny Day. Flareon hits Double Edge, taking Rapidash down below half, and Arcanine's Double Edge takes it down below half, and so one more Double Edge will finish it off, except Arcanine goes down. I send out Flareon, and then I go for Solar Beam, which doesn't quite take down the Flareon, and it's able to take down Rapidash, though it does take itself down in the process. But I really wanted Rapidash for his last two Pokemon, the Shadow Marowak and the Shadow Lapras, because it's the only one who can deal decent damage to him other than Magmar. But anyway, I go for Fire Blast and Bite into the Marowak, which luckily Fire Blast does hit, takes it down to low yellow, and Bite misses the KO by a sliver, and unfortunately Magmar is faster, and the only moves that can hit Marowak are both inaccurate, so I am just relying on Cross Chop to hit, and luckily it does, so I'm able to take it down, bringing out his final Pokemon, which is the Lapras once again, and Hidden Power Rock into it does over half, so I know for a fact it'll go down the next turn, but just to be certain, I decide to go for Thunder Punch, finishing it off, and then all that's left is that Ninjask, which Fire Blast takes down in a single hit with a crit. So with that, we beat Eldis on the third attempt. Now moving on to the big box legendary, Lugia, and I have Flareon go for Hidden Power, and then I bite with Houndour. Unfortunately, Lugia is faster than both of them, and nearly takes down Flareon in a single hit. Hidden Power and Bite don't even take it down to half, so unfortunately it is going to take 3 turns, giving it an opportunity to take down one of my Pokemon, or both if it decides to go for Shadow Storm. Luckily it just goes for Shadow Blast, taking down Houndour, but I send out Magmar, and I'm able to finish it off with one last hidden power. So with that, we go into the final battle against Growlithe. He leaves with a Shadow Rapidash and Moltres, and right away I go for hidden power, rock into the Moltres, and then Thunder Punch, which unfortunately Moltres outspeeds both and hits a Shadow Fire, taking down Flareon on the spot, and Rapidash has Lightning Rod this attempt, so Thunder Punch did nothing. A Shadow Fire nearly takes down Camerupt in a single hit. A critical hit Cross Chop only takes Rapidash down to half. Go for another Cross Chop. Shadow Fire finishes it off the Camerupt. I send out Arcanine, and I can use Double Edge against the Moltres, and Cross Chop misses the Rapidash. I go for Double Edge into Moltres, and Moltres hits a Shadow Fire, taking Magmar down from full health. I send out Rapidash. Double Edge does hit Moltres, not really dealing much damage at all. Rapidash luckily misses another Shadow End. Arcanine gets taken down nearly from full health with a Shadow Fire, and the Shadow End, even with an Intimidate, takes down Rapidash. So even though this does look pretty bad, just having an actual correct lead does make a huge difference in the battle, because I'm able to take down the Rapidash in a single hit with Houndour, and then I dumped all my rare candies into Flareon so that it can survive the attacks a bit better, and also so it can guarantee take down at least the Moltres with Hidden Power Rock. Of course, Tauros is faster and is able to set up Shadow Sky, but luckily it doesn't attack on the first or second turn unless it sees a KO, so I can take down the Executor and then immediately attack the Articuno, dealing over half of its health and damage, and then I can outspeed with Houndour and take it down with a Flamethrower, which brings out his final Pokemon, which is a Shadow Zapdos. And while hitting a Hidden Power is a great start on it, unfortunately, it's not really enough to win this fight, because now it comes down to a bit of shenanigans. I get taken down by a crit Shadow Bolt, and so I send out Camerupt, and then Tauros hits a Shadow Rush, dealing quite a bit of damage to Camerupt. Go for Flamethrower into Zapdos, taking it down to low red. Unfortunately, Zapdos is, of course, faster than both of us and takes down Houndour in a single hit, so I send out Magmar. And then Tauros hits Shadow Rush, taking Magmar down immediately, though it does get burnt, and so it won't be hitting nearly as hard, and also there is now a timer set on the battle because it's slowly going to be losing health. Camerupt does take down the Shadow Zapdos, though I do think that crit was actually necessary. Camerupt goes down, I send out Arcanine, and then the battle is won, because now the Tauros is going to constantly be setting up Shadow Sky, and then I'm going to be overriding it with Sunny Day, and Arcanine can deal a little bit of damage in between. Okay, actually a ton of damage in between. But anyway, with that, we beat Growlithe on the third attempt. So how well did XD's fire types do? Well, they beat the game at a time of 10 hours, 39 minutes, and 32 seconds, with Flareon being at level 51, Houndour being at level 45, Camerupt at 42, Arcanine at 42, Magmar at 40, and Rapidash at level 43. And with 7 feints throughout the game, 6 of those to bosses and 1 of those to random trainers. So it's fair to say that the fire types of XD are very powerful. That is, with a few caveats. Of course, the first being is that Flareon got a very powerful Hidden Power Rock, which did help against the final boss immensely. But considering 2 of my Pokemon hadn't even been touched going into the final Pokemon, I think there was enough wiggle room to where they could have gotten there after probably a few more attempts. But other than that, the fire type is just a very solid type, getting access to a wide variety of moves as well as a lot of great secondary typings that really helped it throughout the game. And none of the bosses were especially difficult, really they just needed a bit of regrouping and a change of tactics to beat them. And so with that, they find themselves near the bottom of the A- tier, mostly due to the fact that there was a lot of running back and forth to get them purified. And of course, because it's a team, there was a lot more swapping and trying to get Pokemon leveled up. So of course, all that wastes a little bit of time throughout the entire run, but they'd still finished with a very good time. And so with that, if you did enjoy this video, consider liking and subscribing. If you have any Pokemon suggestions, please put them down below. Thank you so much for watching, and bye!